When someone comes for you, your first instinct is to react, to explain, to defend, to match their energy. That instinct is human, but it's also the fastest way to lose control. The moment someone attacks, challenges, or disrespects you, they're not just after a response, they're testing something deeper. They're testing whether they can move you, whether they can pull you into their emotional frame. And here's the truth most people miss: whoever controls the emotional tone controls the outcome. So the first thing you do when someone comes for you is not speak. You regulate. You slow your breathing. You let the initial surge pass. You refuse to answer from emotion. Because once emotion leads, clarity leaves. Most attacks feed on reaction. They grow stronger when they get urgency, defensiveness, or explanation. Calm starves them. Calm forces the other person to sit with their own behavior. And most people are deeply uncomfortable with that. You don't need to defend what you know is true. Defense assumes doubt. Defense assumes guilt. Defense hands the other person authority they didn't earn. If your position is solid, it doesn't need protection. It needs posture. That posture shows up as stillness, as certainty without noise, as words that are few but final. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Silence isn't weakness, it's control. It disrupts momentum. It removes fuel. When someone expects reaction and gets calm, they lose footing. The attack has nowhere to land. Silence communicates, "This doesn't reach me," and that message is louder than any comeback. But silence doesn't mean tolerance. There's a difference between staying quiet and allowing disrespect. That's where boundaries come in. A calm boundary ends attacks faster than any argument ever could. Not a speech, not an explanation. A simple, steady line, delivered once, repeated only if necessary. No emotion, no justification, no escalation. Boundaries work because they shift the conversation from conflict to consequence. They don't argue with behavior, they respond to it. And if the behavior continues, you exit. You don't need to win every interaction. You need to leave with your power intact. Staying in a losing dynamic, just to prove a point, is the real loss. Walking away isn't surrender, it's selection. You choose peace over performance, control over chaos, self-respect over ego. Here's what most people never realize. The strongest people aren't the ones who fight back the hardest. They're the ones who don't need to. When someone comes for you and you stay grounded, speak calmly, set a boundary, and disengage if needed, something shifts. Not just in them, but in you. You stop feeling rattled. You stop replaying the moment. You stop carrying the weight of someone else's behavior. And that's real power. So remember this: the next time someone comes for you, don't react first. Don't over-explain. Don't match chaos with chaos. Regulate. Respond with calm. Set the boundary. And walk away with your dignity untouched. Because when you stop giving your energy to people who are trying to take it, you don't just protect your peace, you become untouchable. When something hits you unexpectedly, an accusation, a disrespectful comment, a sharp tone, the body reacts before the mind can catch up. Heart rate rises. Muscles tighten. Thoughts race. In that moment, reacting feels automatic, almost necessary. But that first reaction is rarely your best one. It comes from the nervous system, not from clarity. That's why the most important move when someone comes for you is not to respond immediately, but to regulate first. Regulation means bringing your body back to neutral before you speak. It's the pause between stimulus and response. Without that pause, your words are being chosen by adrenaline, not intention. And adrenaline is designed for survival, not communication. It prioritizes speed over precision, defense over direction. When you speak from that state, you may feel momentarily powerful, but you often lose control of the outcome. Reacting first hands the other person influence over you. They set the emotional tone, and you follow it. Even if your response is clever or justified, it's still shaped by their provocation. Regulation interrupts that pattern. It pulls the conversation back under your control by stabilizing you internally before anything else happens externally. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion or pretending you're unaffected. Regulation is not denial. It's acknowledgement without surrender. You notice the surge of feeling, but you don't let it dictate your behavior. You breathe. You slow your pace. You allow a few seconds for your system to settle. Those seconds are where power lives. Most people underestimate how visible regulation is. Others can feel it. When you don't react immediately, the dynamic shifts. The person who initiated the attack or challenge often becomes uncertain. They expected speed, not stillness. Calm creates contrast. It forces the other person to confront their own energy instead of feeding off yours. Regulation also protects your message. When emotions run high, messages get distorted. Tone sharpens. Words come out harsher or more defensive than intended. Later, you may regret how you said something, even if what you said was accurate. Regulation keeps your message aligned with your values, not your impulses. There's also a long-term effect. Each time you regulate instead of react, you train your nervous system. You teach it that not every challenge is a threat. Over time, your baseline steadiness increases. Situations that once triggered immediate reaction begin to feel manageable. Confidence grows not from dominating others, but from mastering yourself. Reacting first often leads to over-explaining, justifying, or escalating. Regulation opens different options. You might choose to say less. You might set a boundary. You might redirect the conversation. You might decide silence is the strongest response. None of those choices are available when you're flooded with emotion. Another overlooked aspect is self-respect. When you regulate, you communicate to yourself that your peace matters. You don't allow others to pull you into chaos on demand. That internal message is powerful. It builds trust in your own ability to handle difficulty without losing yourself in it. Regulation also changes how others treat you over time. People learn that provoking you doesn't get immediate payoff. They sense that you won't be easily moved. That steadiness often reduces future attempts at control or disrespect. Calm becomes a boundary in itself. This approach requires patience, especially at first. The urge to react can feel overwhelming, but regulation doesn't require perfection. Even a brief pause is enough to shift the trajectory of a conversation. A single breath, a moment of silence, a slower response. These small acts compound. Don't confuse regulation with passivity. You can be firm and regulated at the same time. You can express disagreement without aggression. Regulation gives firmness clarity. It removes the emotional noise that weakens delivery. When someone comes for you and you regulate first, you reclaim choice. You decide whether to engage, how to engage, and when to disengage. You are no longer reacting to the moment, you are shaping it. In the end, the strongest responses don't come from quick reflexes. They come from steady presence. Regulation turns reaction into response, impulse into intention, and chaos into clarity. And when you master that pause, you stop giving your power away before you've even spoken. Calm is unsettling to people who rely on reaction. When someone comes at you with pressure, accusation, or disrespect, they are often trying to pull you into an emotional exchange where they feel most powerful. They may raise their voice, rush their words, or provoke a response because chaos gives them leverage. In those moments, calm becomes the one thing they cannot control, and that's exactly why it's so powerful. Calm disrupts expectation. Most confrontational behavior is fueled by predictability. An attack expects defense. A jab expects anger. A provocation expects reaction. When none of that shows up, the rhythm breaks. The person initiating the pressure loses their footing because the script they're relying on no longer works. Calm creates uncertainty for them and stability for you. Unlike emotion, calm doesn't escalate. It doesn't compete for dominance. It doesn't try to win. It simply holds ground. That stillness can feel intimidating because it offers no hooks. There's nothing to grab onto, nothing to push against. The other person may try harder at first, but without reaction, their energy has nowhere to land. Calm also keeps the conversation within your control. When emotions rise, conversations become reactive and scattered. Points get lost. Tone becomes the focus. Calm keeps everything centered. It allows you to speak deliberately, choose your words carefully, and end the exchange when needed. Control is not about overpowering the other person. It's about not being overpowered by the moment. Another reason calm is uncontrollable is that it comes from internal regulation. No one can force you to be calm. They can provoke, insult, or pressure, but the choice to stay grounded is yours. That internal sovereignty is deeply unsettling to people who seek influence through emotional manipulation. They can't pull a lever that doesn't exist. Calm also exposes intent. When you stay calm, the other person's behavior becomes more visible. Aggression looks like aggression. Manipulation looks like manipulation. Without your emotional response to blur the picture, the interaction becomes clear. This clarity often shifts the dynamic, especially in group settings, where others can see the contrast. There's a misconception that calm means disengaged or weak. In reality, calm requires strength. It takes discipline to regulate when every instinct tells you to react. Calm is not the absence of feeling, it's the presence of control. It allows you to feel without being driven by what you feel. Calm also protects your credibility. Emotional reactions can be dismissed, even when the message is valid. Calm delivery makes your words harder to ignore. People may disagree with you, but they can't easily discredit you. The steadiness of your presence gives weight to your message. Over time, calm becomes a pattern others recognize. When people learn that they cannot control you through pressure, their approach changes. Some become more respectful, others disengage. Either outcome preserves your peace. Calm acts as a filter, allowing only healthy interactions to continue. Calm also benefits you internally. It reduces stress, preserves energy, and prevents rumination. When you stay calm, you're less likely to replay the interaction later, wishing you had said something different. You acted in alignment with your values, and that alignment brings closure. Maintaining calm doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment. You can set boundaries calmly. You can say no calmly. You can walk away calmly. Calm does not remove firmness, it enhances it. A calm boundary is often more effective than an emotional one because it leaves no room for argument. There's also a quiet confidence that comes with calm. It signals that you trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. That trust is felt by others. They may not understand it, but they respond to it. Calm is the one thing they can't control because it's not given to them. It's generated within you. It doesn't rise or fall based on their behavior. It stays steady regardless of their effort. When you choose calm, you reclaim authority over your responses. You decide the pace, the tone, and the ending of the interaction. In a world where many people try to control through emotion, calm stands apart as untouchable. And once you realize that calm cannot be taken from you, you stop fearing confrontation and start moving through it with quiet, unshakable strength. When you know something is true, it carries a different kind of weight. It doesn't rely on persuasion. It doesn't need reinforcement. It simply is. Yet many people feel an immediate urge to defend their truth the moment it's questioned. That urge is understandable, but it often weakens the very position they're trying to protect. Defense suggests doubt, even when none exists. Defending what you know is true shifts the power dynamic. It places the other person in the role of judge and you in the role of applicant. Instead of standing in your clarity, you begin explaining, justifying, or proving something that doesn't require proof. The conversation subtly moves from mutual exchange to evaluation. That shift alone can erode confidence and control. Truth doesn't gain strength from argument. It gains strength from consistency. When you defend, you often respond to tone rather than content. You try to correct misunderstandings immediately, which can pull you into side debates that have nothing to do with the core issue. Before you realize it, you're arguing points you never intended to discuss. Another cost of defending is emotional exposure. Defense is usually driven by the desire to be understood or validated. That desire can make you vulnerable to manipulation. People who sense this may continue questioning or provoking, not because they doubt your truth, but because the reaction itself gives them leverage. When you stop defending, something interesting happens. The burden of the conversation shifts. Instead of you working to convince, the other person must decide whether to accept or reject your position on their own. Silence after a clear statement can be more powerful than any explanation. It allows your words to stand without interference. This doesn't mean refusing dialogue or dismissing others. It means recognizing the difference between discussion and defense. Discussion is voluntary and balanced. Defense is reactive and unbalanced. You can engage in discussion from a place of calm confidence, but you don't need to defend against every challenge. Defending also consumes energy. It requires constant vigilance, mental effort, and emotional labor. Over time, this can lead to fatigue and resentment. Standing in truth without defense conserves energy. It simplifies communication. It reduces the need to manage others' perceptions. There's also an internal benefit. When you don't defend what you know is true, you reinforce self-trust. You send yourself the message that your understanding is solid enough to stand alone. This internal alignment creates steadiness that others can feel, even if they can't articulate it. Many people equate silence with weakness, but silence can be a form of strength. When you choose not to defend, you're not avoiding the issue. You're refusing to engage in a dynamic that undermines you. You're saying without words that your truth isn't up for debate unless you choose to make it so. Defending can also blur boundaries. When you explain personal choices excessively, you invite others into spaces they don't belong. A simple statement protects those boundaries. An extended defense often weakens them. Boundaries don't need to be justified to be respected. Over time, people learn how to treat you based on your responses. If you consistently defend, they may continue to question. If you consistently state and move on, they adjust. Respect grows not from arguments won, but from clarity maintained. Knowing when not to defend requires discernment. Not every question is an attack, and not every challenge requires withdrawal. The key is intention. If the interaction seeks understanding, engage. If it seeks control or provocation, stand firm without defense. When you stop defending what you know is true, conversations become simpler. Your words become fewer and more precise. Your presence becomes steadier. You no longer feel pulled into emotional loops or endless explanation. In the end, truth doesn't need protection. It needs posture. When you stand in what you know without defending it, you communicate confidence without confrontation. That confidence quiets doubt, both in others and in yourself. And once you realize that your truth can stand without argument, you stop giving your power away trying to prove it. Silence is often misunderstood as avoidance, weakness, or surrender, but in reality, it can be one of the most deliberate and strategic responses available. When used intentionally, silence communicates restraint, confidence, and control. It allows you to step out of reactive patterns and choose your position rather than being pulled into someone else's emotional current. Most people feel uncomfortable with silence because it removes familiar cues. Without immediate words, the mind rushes to fill the gap, often with assumptions or anxiety. This discomfort is precisely why silence holds power. It disrupts momentum. It slows interactions that might otherwise escalate. In moments of pressure, silence buys you time to think clearly instead of reacting impulsively. Silence also shifts the burden of the conversation. When you stop speaking, the other person must decide what to do next. They may reveal more than they intended, soften their tone, or reconsider their approach. In many cases, silence invites clarity from the other side without you having to ask for it. Choosing silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you are choosing when and how to say it. Words spoken too quickly can dilute their impact or lock you into positions you don't fully support. Silence gives you space to align your response with your values and goals. In emotionally charged situations, silence prevents escalation. Reacting immediately often feeds tension and gives fuel to conflict. Silence interrupts that cycle. It allows emotions to settle and signals that you are not willing to engage on unstable terms. This alone can de-escalate situations that might otherwise spiral. Silence can also serve as a boundary. Not every comment, accusation, or provocation deserves a response. By choosing silence, you communicate that certain lines of communication are not open for debate. This form of boundary setting is subtle but firm, and it often earns more respect than lengthy explanation. Another strategic aspect of silence is its ability to preserve dignity. When conversations turn disrespectful or manipulative, engaging can lower you to the same level. Silence keeps you above the fray. It allows you to exit mentally, even if you remain physically present. Silence also enhances listening. When you stop preparing your next response, you hear more accurately. You notice tone, intention, and underlying emotions. This deeper awareness helps you respond more effectively when you do choose to speak. There is strength in resisting the urge to fill every pause. Many people talk to relieve their own discomfort, not to add value. Silence filters communication, ensuring that when you speak, your words carry weight. Over time, this changes how others perceive you. They listen more closely because they know you don't speak casually. Strategic silence can also protect your energy. Conversations that drain or provoke you often thrive on engagement. By remaining silent, you deny that energy source. You conserve emotional resources and maintain internal balance. It's important to recognize that silence is a choice, not a default. Passive silence can feel disempowering, but intentional silence is active and purposeful. The difference lies in awareness. You are not frozen or afraid, you are deciding. In professional settings, silence can signal confidence and authority. Pausing before responding to questions or challenges demonstrates thoughtfulness and control. It shows that you are not rushed or intimidated. In personal relationships, silence can create space for reflection. It allows emotions to settle and perspectives to shift. Sometimes the most constructive response is to allow time to do its work. Silence also invites accountability. When you don't rush to reassure, explain, or fix, others are left to sit with their words and actions. This can encourage self-awareness and responsibility. Ultimately, silence is not the absence of communication, but a form of it. It speaks through presence, posture, and restraint. When used wisely, silence protects your clarity, maintains your boundaries, and amplifies your impact. Silence is a strategic response because it keeps you grounded in control rather than reaction. It allows you to move deliberately, speak with intention, and let your calm set the tone. In choosing silence, you choose strength without confrontation and influence without force. Boundaries end attacks faster than arguments because they remove the incentive to continue the conflict. Arguments invite engagement. They create a back and forth that keeps the interaction alive. Boundaries, on the other hand, close the door without slamming it. They don't try to convince, prove, or win. They simply define what will and will not be allowed. And that clarity shuts down attacks at their root. When someone attacks you verbally, emotionally, or psychologically, they are often seeking a reaction. Arguments give them exactly that. Every explanation, defense, or counterpoint signals that you are willing to stay in the fight. Boundaries change the dynamic completely. Instead of meeting force with force, you redirect the interaction onto firm, neutral ground. A boundary is not about controlling the other person. It is about controlling your participation. This is why it works so quickly. You are no longer trying to manage their behavior. You are managing your response. When you calmly state what you will not engage with and follow through, the attack loses its target. Arguments escalate because they rely on emotion and momentum. Boundaries interrupt that momentum. A simple, steady statement, such as "I'm not continuing this conversation," if it stays disrespectful, does more than a long explanation ever could. It communicates self-respect without aggression. Many people hesitate to set boundaries because they fear being seen as rude, cold, or confrontational. But boundaries don't require hostility. In fact, the most effective boundaries are delivered calmly, without emotional charge. This calmness sends a powerful message: you are not threatened, and you are not available for chaos. Another reason boundaries work faster than arguments is that they don't invite debate. Arguments are open-ended. There is always another point to make, another angle to challenge. Boundaries are closed statements. They are not asking for agreement. They are stating a condition. When you argue, you place your peace in someone else's hands. You wait for them to understand, agree, or stop. Boundaries return that power to you. Whether they agree or not becomes irrelevant. Your behavior changes regardless of their response. Consistency is what gives boundaries their strength. A boundary stated once but not enforced becomes a suggestion. A boundary stated calmly and followed every time becomes a reality. Over time, people learn that attacks don't work because they don't lead anywhere. Boundaries also protect your energy. Arguments drain you because they demand emotional labor. You must explain, justify, and defend. Boundaries are efficient. They require fewer words and less emotional investment. This efficiency allows you to stay regulated even under pressure. Setting boundaries also clarifies relationships. It reveals who respects you and who only engages when they can dominate or provoke. This clarity is valuable. It allows you to invest your time and energy where it is reciprocated. Boundaries teach others how to treat you without lectures. You don't need to explain why something is unacceptable. You demonstrate it through your response. This form of teaching is far more effective than reasoning with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. In moments of attack, boundaries prevent you from becoming reactive. Reactivity often leads to regretful words and escalated conflict. Boundaries slow the interaction and keep you aligned with your values. It's important to remember that boundaries are not punishments. They are protective measures. You are not trying to hurt or silence the other person. You are choosing not to participate in harmful exchanges. In professional environments, boundaries maintain credibility. Engaging in arguments can make you appear defensive or unstable. Clear boundaries signal professionalism and emotional intelligence. In personal relationships, boundaries preserve trust and respect. They make it clear that connection is possible, but only under healthy conditions. Ultimately, boundaries end attacks faster than arguments because they remove the fuel. They don't fight the fire. They stop feeding it. When you consistently choose boundaries over arguments, you reclaim control, protect your peace, and make it clear that attacks are not an effective way to reach you.